So sure that each one of you are aware of the cost accounting part, but what was my goal was for today, basically to have a few scenarios covered as a part of it. So basically, when we look at the cost accounting, so we know that what is the cost center and all that, we'll talk about that. And there are primary two aspects to the cost accounting. The first aspect is the direct allocation. So how do we directly allocate the cost to the cost center? And the second aspect is the indirect allocation. So direct allocation, I think most of you is aware. How do we do? I was planning to cover both today, but another thing is at 9 o'clock, I have another session as well. So we only have a 35 minutes. So I will probably be able to do only the direct allocation part today, but we will do indirect allocation. So in the indirect allocation, basically, where the cost get indirectly assigned in the fixed amount or percentage, So for example, I want to do percentage and all that. So 70% goes here, 30% goes there, and whatever. So that is an example of indirect allocations. So I want to cover both, but I'm not sure with the time which we have left, both situations or scenario would be possible today. So probably we'll focus into the very first part, which is the direct allocation part of it. So when I look at the cost accounting, I look at the cost accounting from these two verticals, direct allocation and indirect allocation. Now, when we're talking the direct allocation, then we have a sales process. You can assign and update it at the purchase cost also in the during purchase cycle. You can also update it during journal entry. Like if I book some expense, so I can book some expense to the cost center. And then if I'm issuing some material, so let's say maintenance department comes up and he need material, then we can do goods issue for that. So I have actually taken 4 scenarios. So one is the sales scenario, how cost center get updated. Purchase scenario, how the cost center get updated. If I'm doing a financial journal entry manually, then how the cost center get updated. And then if I'm doing a goods issue of a material, then how does the cost center get updated? And then we also look at the cost accounting. Then another thing where the most of the confusion comes up is the indirect allocation, that how the indirect allocation works. So with the time window which I have today, so I'm not sure if I will be able to reach indirect allocation, but possibly next week we will do indirect allocation also. In the indirect allocation, we will do by the fixed percentage, and we will also do the fixed amount allocation also. So many times what happens is we do fixed amount allocation. So let's say I'm paying my office rent. If I'm paying office rent this amount every month, it should get allocated. How does it get allocated? And then we also have a situation where the cost has to be divided. Okay, based upon the employee of the company department. So we divide 70% here, 30% here, 20% here, 5% here. So that is the indirect allocation. How do we do that? So those are the basically perspective. Let me go through the theory right now, a little bit of a couple of minutes. So here, another aspect is you have a multiple dimensions. I want to talk about the dimension part also. Here, your company can be divided in any department. So any company can be divided by department, sales department, certificate department, development department, maintenance department, etc., etc. Each department can have a cost, and each department can also have a revenue, possibly. Like for example, in case of sales department, you can have both cost and revenue. In case of, let us say, in maintenance department is not any sales, they just have a cost. So in SAP, you can assign cost and you can assign revenue. Both you can assign, depending upon the department. So we talk about the cost center. So another thing which we have to in the cost center definition. So cost center can have cost assigned, expense assigned, and also revenue assigned to it. Both can be assigned, cost and revenue. There is also a concept called distribution rule. Now, what is the distribution rule? That also we'll talk about. So what happens is, and distribution rule distribute the cost to the cost centers through the distribution rule. Cost center does not get directly updated. They get updated through the distribution rule. Remember that. So when we're talking about update, so how cost center get updated? How the cost center get updated? So cost center get updated. The first and foremost, we can assign a distribution rule. Distribution rule, and then distribution rule will update your cost center. Distribution rule basically, let's say you're creating a sales invoice, and you can assign in the sales invoice, and it will update your cost center. Same thing in the purchase invoice. This is the one rule number one. The second rule is, rule 2 is that we assign to a GL. GL is assigned to distribution rule, and distribution rule is assigned to the cost center. These are the two ways, fundamental two ways to update a cost center. You assign distribution center, and distribution center enter the cost center. Or you assign the distribution rule to a GL, and when you're posting to the GL, then it gets assigned to the cost center. So these are the fundamental two different methods to update cost center. You can never update cost center directly. If you want to create a cost center, you can create as many cost center as you want. So if you log into SAP, for example, if you go to financial accounting, if you go to cost accounting, and here we have a cost center. And if you see the cost center, you can see different cost center which has been created. So like if we go to Control F, I can see this cost center C100, 1, 2, 3. These are the different cost centers which has been defined. You can have as many cost centers as you want. If you want to define any new cost center, you can say C001, 4, whatever. And this is like training cost center. And is a training cost center. We created training today, and for the training we created this cost center. Now here you assign this cost center also to the dimension. We'll talk about dimension because we don't have a time today. There are 3 dimensions coming in the picture because only 3 are activated. You can have 5 till the 5 dimension: department, business unit, and work location. Then here you have also a sort code. That is what is being explained here. The sort code is basically grouping of the customers. So you want to create a sort code. So that is what you see here. Sort code. Sort code is like a, if you know, select a cost center for training and sales, and within the sales you have. So it's like a grouping. Then you can say from this date until what date this cost center is active. So we say, oh, this cost center is active till whatever date in the future. So we can put a date. So this cost center is valid till this date. So we created a cost center. See, if I save it, then operation completed successfully, and we are just able to create a cost center. So if I go back to the selection and control F, and if I see my cost center, then a new cost center C004 has been created. Simple cost center. So we are able to create a cost center. So we set up a cost center and we create this cost center as C004. We created that cost center. That is what we see here, cost center. Then we also have a distribution rule. So what happens is, when you create a, look at this statement, when you create a cost center, the system automatically creates a distribution rule with the same name. So by default, when you create a cost center, distribution rule get created automatically. Let us check that. So we created a cost center C004. If I close it, if I go to distribution rule, and in the distribution rule, if I go to control F, and if I go back and select, then here we have a distribution rule C004. Now I didn't create it C004. We create a cost center C004. But this distribution rule C004 with the same code, with the same description get assigned. And this cost center C004 get assigned to this particular distribution rule. You can create a distribution rule separately also. So when you create a cost center, then distribution rule get created automatically. But if you want to create a distribution rule manually, that also you can do. That we will talk when we are talking about indirect allocation. Because what happens when we want to assign more than one cost center to a distribution rule? So in that case, you create a distribution rule manually and then assign one or more than one cost center to it. So take an example. So here we don't have it. We'll do this in the next session. So if you guys say I have this distribution called test one. So we create a distribution rule test one. Now in this is for the indirect allocation. We'll talk more into the next session. Now in this distribution rule, we have a two cost center one, cost center two. And then this cost center, we have given the percentage. So which basically means the 70% will go to this cost center and 30% will go to this cost center. So whenever you are allocating a revenue, when you are creating in a cost center, when you are allocating any kind of expense, it will automatically be divided into 70-30 whenever I'm going to use this distribution rule. This is an example of a indirect allocation. Now, how do I know it is indirect allocation? Because in the distribution rule, we have this checkbox. If this checkbox is not on, then it is indirect. If it is on, then is it direct. So we are focusing today on the direct, but I just want to quickly touch base. That is what is being mentioned here. So we can define. Now, in our case, what happens is we have this automatically distribution rule being created. So if you go back here in the distribution rule, and if I go to control F, and if I select that, and if I select C004, so then this, along when I created this cost center, this distribution rule get automatically created. We didn't create manually. When it create automatically, it also make it active. It also create as a direct allocation, and fixed amount is not active. So that means you cannot do fixed amount for this, because this is what system automatically create. Now, another thing which you see here is GL and cost accounting. which basically means you can associate your cost center to a GL. So that is another thing which is very important to understand, that if I want to associate, so if I go to expenditure, for example, and in expenditure, I select some kind of expenditure. So let's say I have this electricity expenditure, water expenditure. And then when you're doing a water, and here I select my department and I assign. Now remember this, and this when you're assigning C004, but you're assigning actually the distribution rule. When you're assigning to GL, you're not assigning cost center. You're assigning distribution rule. So what we are doing here, if I see, this is my GL 610010, and then this is some expense account for the water. This is assigned to department, and in the system we assign, but we are assigning the distribution rule to a GL, not cost center directly. Remember that. So what we did, we took a GL. So that was the GL, for example, for water, and that GL is 610010, 610010, and this is for water. And we have assigned distribution rule, not cost center. Distribution rule C004. Now, because we have assigned distribution rule 004, so indirectly we have assigned cost center C004. So C004 cost center is assigned to a GL through the distribution rule. You never assign cost center directly to a GL. That is what is being described on this slide. Distribution rule link between GL and cost accounting. So what happens is, in the GL, you assign your distribution rule, and that distribution rule get assigned to the cost center. So in our case, we took a GL for the water, and that GL we assigned to this cost center. That is what we have done. Now, let us do some exercise. Okay. So we have created a cost center. We have assigned this cost center to a GL. Now, let us say I want to, and I update this, hit OK. And after that, let us say I want to create a sales cycle. Let's start with the sales cycle. Okay. So I go to sales cycle, I create a sales order. And then I select any of our customer. This is a regular sales order, nothing different into it. And I select any of the item. And we select some amount, 18,000 or whatever. So this is we take in 18,000. And here we have assigned, here we have a department C004. So what we have done, we are manually assigning our distribution rule C004 to this sales order. Okay, and then we created delivery date missing. Okay, so we created it, we enter the delivery date, we add, we say yes. So then we go to sales order. So this is the sales order here. And then in the sales order, we go to the next step, which is created delivery. This is a regular delivery, nothing different, as we do many of them. And we say delivery. So we create a sales order, we create a delivery. I go to journal entry here. When I go to journal entry, then what do we see here? So this is the cost of goods sold. And this is the account, cost of goods sold 50025. And this get assigned to this cost center C004. Now, how come this cost center came here because we assign it manually in the sales order. So now there are two things to understand. So we create a sales order, we create a delivery, and we see the cost is assigned to this cost center C004, right? For auto determination, so pay attention to this. For auto determination, because what happens if I want this COGS to get assigned to this GL automatic? For auto determination, then we need to assign GL of COGS, cost of goods sold, to this cost center. So what will happen is we have to go into that same way, because in our case, we assign it manually. So it take that cost center C004. But user will say, I'm not going to assign to this cost center. So how do I automatically assign? So that basically means in our account determination, we have this cost of goods sold. And then in the different cost of goods sold account determination, based upon different criteria, in those accounts, we can assign the cost center and it will update that cost center automatically because it's assigned to GL. We did manually. We can do automatically also. So here, that is where the cost center COGS comes into the picture. Now, before I go any further, what I want to do here is also, I close it here. And then I want to go back to the financial accounting, cost accounting. I go to cost center report. So let me select our cost center, which is C004. So I want to see what is update to my cost center is. I want to see the cost center report. This is simple standard SAP cost center report. I hit enter. And now here in this cost center, I have this cost. This is the expenditure. So this is a direct allocation. Why it is a direct allocation? Because our distribution rule is for direct allocation, not indirect. If our distribution rule was for indirect, then it will go there. We have not done that scenario. So here in the indirect scenario, system tell in the expenditure type 12,551.66 get assigned. Now, why it get assigned? Because of the cost of goods sold. So this is my expense part. Okay. So we saw that at the delivery account, this get assigned here. After delivery, now the next step which you want to do in the sales cycle, I want to create an invoice. So go to AR invoice. And then in the AR invoice is for 18,000. And then I say save, say yes. And we save it. So we created an AR invoice. When we create AR invoice, we go back and then we see the journal entry again. Okay. Now we are doing a sales cycle and we are seeing the impact of the sales cycle on the cost accounting. So here in the revenue, we get assigned, it is related to sale. So this revenue account got assigned to this cost center C004. And then the sales revenue account is 400. Now, if I want this cost center to get updated automatically, then what I can do, then for this cost center account, this is the revenue, I can assign this distribution rule here. So again, in my case, because in the sales order, I have assigned the cost center, so that follows into delivery and invoice. If you don't want to do that manually in the sales order, then you can assign the cost center to the cost of goods sold GL and to the revenue GL. And if you have multiple revenue GL, then in the account determination to the corresponding GL account, you can assign the corresponding GL as you want. Because you can say that I don't want all revenue to go to one GL. Then you can assign multiple cost center to different GLs. Or you can assign same cost center to multiple GL also. So here, if this was my revenue account 40001, if I assign my cost center here or distribution rule here, then user do not need to assign cost center in the sales order. I see that it get assigned. Now, after I come out of it, and then I want to go to the cost center report. So I go to cost center report C004, and then in my cost center, this is what I have. I have my expense side and I have my revenue side. In the expense side, I have a 12,551 because that is coming from cost of goods sold. My revenue side is 18,000 because that is my sales invoice gross amount. So in this sales invoice about 18,000, and if it's the total, I'm in the positive 5,488. So if I see, this is my expense, this is my cost of goods sold, which is coming from delivery cost of from delivery document. This is my revenue, which is coming from revenue document, and my net is 5,448. That is my net so far. After that, we come out of the sales cycle. Now we can also book a purchase invoice as well. Same thing, right? So let's book a purchase invoice. So I want to book some expenses. So I go to purchase invoice, AP invoice, and the AP invoice, I want to take any vendor, whatever, and then I select a my water bill. So I'm doing a water bill, and for the water bill, I want to go to that account that I think this was that water account. So the moment I take this water account, and because we have assigned this cost center there, it get automatically determined. So when I'm doing AP invoice against this, it get assigned, and let us say I'm doing for $1,000, whatever. I can put my tax code is like entering an invoice. I go to location. So what I'm doing, this is the GL I have assigned my cost center to. Water bill. So I'm booking water bill invoice. And if I'm doing a water bill invoice, in that case, my cost center, which was assigned, got automatically determined here. I save it, say yes, AP invoice. Then I go to journal entry, and this is what I see in journal entry. So my vendor, Acme Associate, got credited because when you vendor invoice, vendor get credited. And this account got updated for this cost center C004. How much amount? 1,000. I want to go and check the cost center accounting report. So we book in a purchase invoice, buying some water invoice or whatever, some expenses. And if I go back to my cost center accounting report, so what do we see in it? Go to cost center accounting, cost center report. And here I have another expenditure. You see that here? Another line item appears. I can collapse it and I can expand it. And if you expand here, so this is my revenue entry, which come from AR invoice. This is my cost of goods sold entry, which is come for delivery invoice. This is my water expenses. If you go to water expenses, and how much it was for? 1,000. If I want to see the transaction, this is the transaction 5046. If I click on it, it will take you to general entry. If you go to PU here, it will take you to AP invoice. I can go back and trace back the AP invoice for which I incurred the expense. So we have done that part also. Now, so we have done these two scenarios, sales invoice, purchase. Let's say I want to do general entry posting. So how do we do general entry posting? So we click on it. And if I go to general entry, this is a general entry as we do. We select our business partner. So let's say I'm doing a vendor invoice and some vendor. and I'm crediting it for, let us say, $300 or whatever. Then we are entering here our list of accounts, and then I go back to my, let's say, water expenses, and I'm debiting this for $300. Now, again, when I'm doing a journal entry for this general ledger, this is for the water, $300 is debited, customer is credited, and the department C004 has arrived. And then we add, and then we say yes. Now, after creating journal entry, I want to see my cost center account report and see what is the effect of it. So I go to here, my cost center report, and then this is my cost center which we created today. We click on it, and then we can see another entry here for $300. Now this $300, this is for J general entry. This is the J document 504647, and for 300. And because it's an expense, so it will show on the expense side. And then it will keep updating. If I collapse it, then it will keep updating my total. Another thing which I would like to mention is the project also. Some point of time, I will, if you see one right column here, there's a project accounting also. So what happens if you're incurring the cost to the project? Then how you link that cost to the project to the cost center accounting? So the cost center accounting and the project accounting are linked. Hopefully some point of time that also I will talk about. If you see here in the right hand side, there is a button called cost, the project, which basically means in SAP there's a project. So where we're incurring the revenue and expense to the project, that get also linked to the cost center accounting. Don't have a time today, but we'll do that session also hopefully some point of time. Now, another thing which I want to do, let's say I do a goods issue. So maintenance department need a material. They knock the door. They said, oh, we need this hardware. So what we can do? So when we go to our inventory, when I go to inventory transactions, I go to good issue. I select an item I want. So let's say this item. And here in this item, this is account which is associated, and I can select my cost center. So this item I'm issuing to this warehouse. This is a goods issue I'm doing. And then I save it. Say yes. So goods issue done. If I click on it, and then if I look into my financial report, my cost and cost accounting report. So this is my cost center report, and we hit enter and hit enter. Now we have another entry, stock difference losses, and that additional expense has been assigned. This is from sales revenue from AR invoice. This is my cost of goods sold, which is coming from delivery. This is 5001. This is entry which is 12,000 coming from expense side on the goods issue, because we have done the good issue to this cost center. So that get assigned on expenditure side. We have done purchase order booking with this cost center. We did a PU, which is a purchase invoice for $1,000. And then we have done the general ledger entry for $300. So these are all different expenses. They are all direct allocation. We have not yet done indirect allocation. So indirect allocation, I was planning to do today, but because we do not have a time and So we will basically plan this next week. And indirect allocation, that's where the most of the confusion is. So hopefully next week we would be we will be doing this indirect allocation also, and also look into the project accounting as well, that how the project accounting is linked to the cost center accounting. And we will also look in the budgeting also, that how the budgeting is also look into that as well. So with that, I conclude my session for today, and I thank you for everyone for joining. Hope this was of some use, and I really appreciate you joining. We'll do another session next week. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you,
Thank you.
sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.